Namo Fudobos. Namo Fudobos. Namo Fudo. Bos. Let us celebrate the liturgy of the day. Let us share the peace. May all beings awaken to that peace which is our true home. Let us take refuge. I take refuge in the ground of being, within which I live and move and breathe. Let us make the accord. I take sanctuary in the heart of being, accepting all of my delusions in thought, word, or deed, born of ignorance, hatred, and greed. Let us give thanks. I give thanks for all things, awakening to the interbeing of all nature. May my heart be open and my mind clear. May all be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, and may all come to know that peace which is beyond all understanding. Since it is the practice of enlightenment, that practice has no beginning. And since it is enlightenment within the practice, that realization has no end. So I'm going to be continuing this week with a set of 4 talks that my brother Osho Brad started last week, where we're going to walk through the 4 divine abidings, or awakened abodes, or the 4 Brahma Viharas. They're known by a few different names. The 4 exalted dwellings. Kind of run into different descriptions of these things as you run into different translations of the texts and different commentaries on them. But they're the 4 states of being of the awakened state. And as Osho Brad started last week, he talked about metta, or loving kindness. I'll be talking about equanimity this evening, or I like to refer to as inner peace. Brad will talk next week about compassion, and I'll follow it up with joy. As Osho Brad talked about, these 4 are states of being that we are trying to cultivate as we practice. As we grow, as we understand more of the Dharma, as we understand more about life, these are the states of being that give us some indication of arrival. As I rest in a state of inner peace and compassion and joy and metta, or loving kindness, that I see something about life that I otherwise maybe don't notice all the time, or when I'm wrapped up in life's problems and things that come up, I have a tendency to kind of lose sight of the magic of what it is to be here. But of course, there's a challenge with these four, because you know I want inner peace, I want compassion and joy and loving kindness. They sound great, but how? How do we get there? Right? Because a lot of and not to throw shade in any way, shape, or form on other teachings on the four exalted dwellings, but a lot of them spend a lot of time talking about how cool they are and how great it feels to reside in this, sense of joy or compassion or whatever the one is that they're talking about. But they rarely say how. All right, so how do I get there? So I thought I would talk in the context of inner peace or equanimity, which is the one I'm taking. I wanted to talk a little bit about how, because there's some danger in not knowing how the heck do I get here. If this is a state I want to dwell in, how do I find myself there? And I was reminded of one of my very, very favorite Seinfeld episodes of if you don't know how, if you don't have any kind of idea of where you're going, then it kind of doesn't matter how you go. Remembering a line from Alice in Wonderland where, is it the caterpillar who asks where she's going, and she says she doesn't know, and he says, well, then it doesn't really matter which way you go then. So it's sort of the same thing, right? The particular Seinfeld that I'm thinking about is a real famous one. I'm sure you know it, where George is driving in the car with his mother next to him and his father in the back seat. And his father is not comfortable. The seat's too far back, and he's trying to get, George's mother to pull the seat up, and she's saying the mechanism isn't working. And he says something like, I have to sit here like an animal and she blames the mechanism. And then he looks towards the sky, brings his hands to his face. You know I'm going to say it if you know this episode. And he says, "Serenity now!" Right? And George says to him, "What is that?" And his father says, "The doctor gave me a relaxation cassette. He says when my blood pressure gets too high, I'm supposed to say, 'Serenity now!'" And George says, "Are you supposed to yell it?" And look, it's making me laugh. I can't even get through it, describing it. And his father says, "The man on the tape wasn't specific." And isn't that the way of so many teachings? Like, we want to cultivate loving kindness and compassion and joy and inner peace. How? You just want to cultivate compassion and loving kindness and peace. Yeah, but I don't understand how. You just do it. I don't know what that means. I don't know what to do. It's like the worst kind of Instagram wisdom. It just kills me. I'm going to get back on the highway now. I could feel myself being pulled over to talk about something that's going to take us off. There's got to be another way. And so I was thinking, all right, where in life do I run into this general sense of these four, of a sense of loving kindness and inner peace and compassion and joy? Where do I run into it naturally? And my wife gave me the answer. My wife is a preschool teacher, and she every day comes home with a story about something that happened with the kids that she's working with, and how she had to interact with them. And they are the best stories, because these are little kids. They're like 4 or 5, and they're funny and they're cute, and they say the best stuff. And of course, my wife, in her position as a teacher, sort of is this, the person to help them, to help them through the scenario they're dealing with. And so, but she can see it from this sort of different perspective than what they see it, right? I'll give you an example. She was telling me just last night about a little boy who was at lunch, and it was the best lunch day. It was pizza sticks. She tells me there's something kind of like a mozzarella stick, but I don't know. Maybe that's all they are, but she's not even sure herself. But it's the best day. And you can picture it for a 4-year-old. Heck, even I want a pizza stick. You know, one of the kids, this little guy, was eating a pizza stick, and he accidentally dropped it. And she saw it happen. And she watched as the struggle happened within him, that tears just came, and he was trying to just eat the rest of his lunch and quietly, but she could see like just these tears well up, like the worst thing happened. He dropped his pizza stick, and she went over to him. He said, "Honey, what happened?" And I dropped my pizza stick. Yeah. Oh, honey, I'll come. We'll finish the one that you have, and then we'll go back up together, and I will tell them that you need another. Okay. And she cared for that little guy. She saw it. She saw it clearly. She knows that dropping a pizza stick is not the worst thing that can happen. But to that little guy in that moment, it was pure suffering. Like, it's pizza stick day, and I dropped my pizza stick. And I'm reminded of another one, that like another little boy in her class comes up to her some days, and he's so excited. He just, what is it that you want to tell me? And he's like, and it's some story about Godzilla. It's always a story about Godzilla, but there's like the wonder in his face and the magic coming out of his eyes, the joy of what's happening in that as he's talking about Godzilla and what Godzilla does. And I realized this really is a great example of these 4 abidings, of that these experiences, from her perspective, as she gets to witness like these little kids, she feels a sense of just love and kindness. It just awakens. It's just there. She doesn't have to reach for it. And when something like Godzilla does something really cool, and he's just so super excited to tell her, she feels joy. It just happens. And when somebody drops their pizza stick, like, compassion just awakens. There's no work. It just happens. There's nothing to read. There's no lesson to do. He dropped his pizza stick. The tears are coming out of his eyes. Bam. Compassion. And of course, she knows she's not a little kid. She can see all of this without being attached to any of it. She can feel the emotions. She can feel the love and the compassion and the joy, but she does it from a place of equanimity, a place of inner peace, where she can see that what they're going through is, in the grand scheme of the life that we know as adults, we're so smart, right? That none of this is all that important, right? Like, none of it is all that heavy. Nothing. A pizza stick isn't something to cry. Like, I can picture like on the opposite end of the spectrum. You dropped your pizza stick. Stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about. Like, it's the complete wrong way to address the poor kid, right? But she sees it. She sees it so clearly, and why? Because she knows. She can see these things really clearly, and so the 4 divine abidings just awaken. They just happen automatically. So now, okay, cool. Great metaphor, Mike. What does that mean for us? Because in this scenario, they're little kids, and she's a teacher, and she can see it more clearly. Well, I could say that in if I the luck of some other spiritual traditions is I could take this metaphor and just turn it right around and say, and so we look up towards God as our Father to give us the same kind of attention that my wife, the teacher, is able to give these little kids. But in Buddhism, we don't tend to look up, right? We look in. So how can we do the same thing by looking in? If I look toward the actual sutra that describes the four abidings, the answer is right in front of me. And so I'm excited to share it with you. I'm like the kid telling about Godzilla. And then in the sutra, in the instructions to the kalamas, so in the very famous sutra, the Buddha's instructions to the kalamas, it's mostly famous. In fact, I think even in the talks I've given, I've referenced it a whole bunch of times, but I've never mentioned the four exalted dwellings. Have I? Maybe I did. I don't know. But in that talk, it's mostly famous because it's the talk where the Buddha says to these folks, don't accept a teaching just because someone smart said it, or it was written in a scripture, or it's traditionally known, or it's his sort of manifesto on what to accept as true. And the bottom line in the sutra is, only when it is as clear and as true to you as this mala is sitting in my own hand, when it's as true as that, only when it's that true, then accept it. Don't accept it, even if I say it, the Buddha. Don't accept it just because I say it. It's gotta be true for you. And the very next part of that sutra is, if you do that, you will reside in these four exalted dwellings. And he goes on to describe them. Equanimity, compassion, joy, empathetic joy, that is, and loving kindness. To me, that's something. What he's saying is, just like the little kids and my wife, when you realize in your own heart what is most true, when you arrive at a place of wisdom that is unshakable for you, then you don't have to find ways to be equanimous, compassionate, loving metta, loving kindness, or joy. They just happen. They are, in fact, I love it because they're called the awakened abodes. And it's one of these words that has a double meaning, right? It's an abode of the awakened, right? So you have this picture of the statue of the Buddha, right? Yeah, come here, buddy. Look how peaceful he is. Like there, you can see he's awakened, he's enlightened. He feels these four things very deeply and readily, right? But that word awakened also can very easily mean they are abodes that are awakened from a place of wisdom. And here we are again, how does this relates perfectly to the system of mindfulness that we teach, right? We teach in our system of mindfulness that emotions are based off of our thoughts, and our thoughts are based off of our beliefs, right? And that if we have an emotion that troubles us, anxiety, depression, something like that, it's based on a thought that's grounded in a belief that's driving that experience. Well, here we are. Joy, compassion, love and kindness, inner peace, those are emotional states driven off of a thought, which is driven off of a belief. That belief is the wisdom that I earn for myself through my own searching of it. It's pretty cool. Find what's true for you. Find what's true for you. How do you find yourself into these four awakened states? Into this sense of equanimity where I can see what's happening in front of me, and I can see it without needing to be attached to it. Because that's essentially what equanimity is all about. Equanimity gets sometimes, I think, a rough interpretation. Inner peace gets a rough interpretation that sort of means that I'm emotionless. That I can see something very wonderful and be fine with it. I'm not shaken by that. It's nice. Or I see something horrible and painful, and I'm also not shaken by that. I keep my emotional spectrum right here, like in the visible light spectrum. And in doing so, I miss all of these other wavelengths that are also light. But that's not correct. That's not the correct interpretation of equanimity. Equanimity is, I experience my emotions fully, as a human being does. I experience joy in the biggest way that I can. I experience compassion in the biggest way that I can when I confront suffering. I do this, but I don't attach myself to it. That's what it means. To be able to rest in these things, but hold them loosely, because they are not permanent. And life comes and life goes. And I don't want to find myself attached to them. So this is that inner peace of my wife helping those little kids. She knows. Like, life is going to come. There will be more pizza sticks, right? Someday he's going to learn that Godzilla, may not be real. He may not. I don't know. I'm not going to be the one to spoil that. The moment we receive true and trusting, solid and clear like a diamond, infinite light and life embrace and protect us, liberating us completely. Let us take the 4 immeasurable vows. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to liberate them. Delusions are endless. I vow to end them. The ways of compassion and wisdom are boundless. I vow to embody them. The way is unattainable. I vow to attain it. Let us take the precepts for the community of the Bodhisattva's vow. I allow my true self to manifest in all aspects of life. I take complete responsibility for my own life and for all of my actions. I affirm my personal being and acknowledge it as a path to awakening and freedom. I embrace all aspects of my personal being, including my shadow, so that they may be transformed. I affirm an attitude of openness to my true self, even in the midst of suffering. As you can tell, we're substituting the usual Dharma talk video for the full service. So I'm going to chant the Nembutsu just a few times before spending a little time in abiding, in meditation, just simple abiding meditation, taking in what is already there, not trying to do anything. Feel free, if you have a home altar, to offer incense at this time. Join me in the chant, join me in the abiding. Namu Amida Remembering that we never practice alone or merely for ourselves, let us offer the merits of our practice by reciting the Bodhisattva's Gatha. We dedicate this practice to the welfare of all beings through space and time. May it be so.